Good morning to baristas. So, Louis the Fooey Avalone has disgraced the pages of my favorite local GOP ass rag with yet another swipe at the president not having the moral authority to decide what is fair for the public. That right, of course, belongs to the market, namely private providers whose bottom line is their profit and the maintenance of their unelected and irresponsible class power. Louis goes on to rhetorically ask, what is fair? And tells us that if we search the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, newsflash, Louis, the latter is part of the Constitution, we can't find the word fair. The Constitution talks of freedom of speech and religion, but not fairness thereof. So it seems fairness has no place in Louis' constituted order of things, and in that much he's exactly right. Of course, gagging on the idea, he's playing semantic games. The idea of free use of rights is based on the common law notion of fair use by all citizens. But it's necessary for him and his libertarian constituents to separate the two. He quotes Milton Friedman, "I am not in favor of fairness, I am in favor of freedom." That's because, Louis says, fairness means someone else has to decide what's fair for you and me. A society that puts fairness and equality before freedom gets neither, he says. Freedom is achieved not by fairness or justice or equity delivered by government. Well, Louis is, loving the irony, an attorney who goes before courts and petitions judges for a living. He seeks justice and fairness every goddamn day from the government. He doesn't get to decide what's fair for himself or his client or for his adversary. The judge, theoretically anyway, acts as the arbiter and enforcer of public order and the public good. Otherwise, there would be nothing but a raw contest of naked power between Louis and his adversary, and in that case, I think he'd get his ass handed to him. He tells us that fairness and social justice come at the expense of freedom. Only if your idea of freedom is the liberty of some rich bastard to own slaves as private chattel, not the right of the slave to achieve social justice and freedom. Looked at from the view of the oppressed, liberty and justice, for all, are mutually reinforcing, not preclusive. But from the oppressor's POV, that is, Louis and his class, the contradiction is obvious. So fairness must necessarily be removed from freedom. He tells us when you're out there on the basketball court of life, take the shot, even if you're 6'4" and can slam dunk the ball. Don't let the resulting inequality of result with the small fry hold you back. That's your natural reward. Here we have it. Freedom must equal inequality, which is natural, as are its rewards. But Louis is not really defending the natural inequality of height on the court. If that were true, white boys like him would be sweeping up after the game, not owning the stadium. No. He's defending entrenched and most often inherited wealth in the form of liquid capital or real estate, an artificial mechanism that sets up the whole game for the millionaire and rigs it against the minimum wage employee before it begins. And because it is rigged, the game is not and cannot be free for 99% of its players. That must be Louis' concept of law, too, otherwise he'd recuse himself from the bench. Louis is a Republican because he thinks this elitist, anti-fairness ideology defines republicanism. Now, the newsflash for you, Louis, a republic is defined by public order for the common good, established for public accountability to the majority of the governed. Since that's too much like socialism and democracy and other satanic things, Louis' people will prefix the term with an adjective like Christian or free to gut the term of any substantive meaning. Let's look at the kind of republic Louis would have us live in, or mostly die in, if disemboweled of socialism and democracy, like Honduras. There, the socialist president, Zelaya, socialist, in air quotes, was ousted in 2009 by freedom-fighting military men, always in dark glasses, always a symbol of freedom and public accountability. Now the people who own the real estate and its private capital have, at last, their freedom. That has meant privatizing the functions of government for their personal profit, like electrical and water utility systems, the ports, and the entire Honduran public school system. And there won't be any tax vouchers for Honduras, I guarantee. Pay directly up front or keep your little bastards working in my sweatshop for 10 fucking cents an hour. This has also meant converting jobs into part-time, temporary, contract labor to bust unions and disembowel any workplace benefits like health and minimum wages. No NLRB for Honduras. Even national treasures like the Mayan ruins of Copan are being given over to municipalities, which are in turn controlled by the likes of Miguel Facuse, the richest man in the country with his own private army. The coup de grace of the coup is a new law for model cities. This libertarian nostrum will create autonomous economic zones, private cities, where the Constitution will have no jurisdiction, like PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel into seascape cities. The owners and investors will be free to escape reality and create their own society where only their private will prevails and the only freedom of its employees will be their right to work, or not, at their owner's choosing. Because remember, freedom has nothing to do, as Louis says, with equity, fairness, or justice. And what has been the social result of this kind of freedom? According to the United Nations, Honduras had the highest murder rate in the world in 2011, as the state has abdicated the simplest duties of justice. Drug gangs control whole neighborhoods and towns where they impose and collect all taxes. There's privatization for you, Louis. With that public revenue, they buy courts, judges, politicians. In fact, you're more in danger of being robbed, raped, or killed if you run into the police in Honduras than by the narco-traffickers. But as long as the Honduran 1% can gate themselves off from the swine outside and live in freedom, that's all that matters, all that counts. And that's the kind of fooey-free republic Louis and his kind have in store for us if his boys prevail this year. If Walker doesn't take a hike out of Wisconsin, or Romney rams the White House. If you'll notice, in Honduras, as in Chile, a military dictatorship is required for this kind of free republic, administering a forceful enema to the body politic, purging it by blood of all traces of democracy and socialism. That's the only way their utopia can be established, and the difference between this and Red Terror is only who is being sacrificed to the good of history and humanity. According to Louis, it's not the militarists and their death squads who are the initiators of force, it's those who resist them. The National Popular Resistance Front of Honduras is an umbrella group of labor, human rights, media, and legal groups seeking to restore the Honduran constitution and elected government, but they are, Louis' kind, the enemies of freedom, while the death squads that kill them with impunity are the defenders of freedom because they protect it from the forced imposition of fairness and equality and justice. We're coming up on the 48th anniversary, on June 21st, of the murder of 3 civil rights workers, not in Honduras, but in the USA. James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, by the KKK Underground in Neshoba County, Mississippi. Remember that to Louis' folks, it's the 3 civil rights workers, not the white knights of the KKK, who initiated force, and thus the acts of the white knights were a lawful defense of freedom and self-government up to the time they dumped the 3 bodies in a pond in the Choctaw Indian Reservation. So let's take Louis at his word and follow the example of those 3. Like Goodman and Schwerner and Chaney, let's initiate force against Louis' freedom, because if we don't put freedom under the occupation of justice, fairness, and equity, we will be living in the Neshoba County of 50 years ago, or the Honduras of right now. Hello? Is anyone there? Come on, I hear you breathing. They hung up. After this video, I knew it couldn't have been fairness calling.